Dirt roads to rock crawling, two-buck chuck to screaming eagle, moonshine to 50-year-old single malt. We talk about it all here on Wheelin' Wine and Whiskey with your hosts, Jason and Chris.
Welcome to Wheeling Wine and Whiskey, episode 118 on remote at Meadow Lake. Once again, Chris sitting across from me. How about this, Chris, huh? Another beautiful day at Meadow Lake.
Oh, my God. We've been here for like 2 weeks, right?
There's people out Wow, look at that paddleboarding right there, huh? Anyways, there's people out on the lake.
She in a bikini.
Really nice. Smoke has somewhat cleared here. It's a pretty damn good day.
Yep.
And we are here with a couple special guests. I have been looking forward to this episode for a while.
Yeah.
We've got two powerhouses here in the welding industry.
Yes, we do.
Yeah?
Yep.
Who's here?
Well, we got
Greg from Premier Power Welder.
That's right.
And
John
Allen, who is a certified welder.
That's correct.
And has been on our podcast before. So welcome, gentlemen, to the podcast. And without further ado, let's just get into this. Trail welding is kind of our topic here.
Yeah.
And first of all, I want to start with Greg. And you acquired this business years ago. I don't know. How many years ago did you acquire the business?
We've owned Premier for about 6 years.
6 years. And then so you have what I consider, John considers, many people have these on their rigs, the best welder out on the market for trail repairs. And so let's talk about the history of Premier Power Welder, if you will. You've got some cool history because I knew Pat back in the day, drove a killer Bronco. And so let's just pick up from there.
Okay, so we became acquaintances with Pat and Jan Grimillion and Harry Robinson. Harry Robinson is from the Link Arc company, who is Link Arc is a trademark that we own, and Premier Power Welder, Pat and Jan and Grimillion, and about 20, it's probably been pushing 30 years ago, we started working with Harry from Link Arc and Pat and Jan from Premier Power Welder to develop alternators that would essentially just bolt into the factory place of the alternator that you remove from the vehicle. So we did that. Yeah, we started good over 25 years ago working with them.
Okay.
And so that's how we got our foot in the door. And during that time, the product development was absolutely just a blast. And some challenges like anything.
Sure.
And working with them was just extremely great. A lot of hands-on, a lot of trial and error. And about 6 years ago, Pat and Jan contacted us and wanted us to take over all the production, which we had, previously been doing quite a bit of work with their control boxes and quite a bit of work with computerization, and all the new stuff. You gotta make the system work with the computer whenever you put a welding system on a vehicle.
In the newer vehicles, especially.
Oh yeah. Anything.
All those JL latte makers.
Yeah, 95 and newer is you've got charge lights, you've got computers
check
and all that.
Check engine light comes
but
on.
just to give you a little bit of history, a gentleman that I knew from years ago, a guy named Glenn Stroud, is no longer with us. He invented the system in the early to mid 70s, and he was out of Texas, and him and Harry started working together, and then Harry, and Pat started working together in the late 70s.
Wow.
So that's how long the system's been.
That's when you graduated high school, right, Chris?
No, I might have been a little later than that.
Yeah. So the the alternator welding system, Premier Power Welder, is not anything brand new. So it's been tried and tested and on every trail across the United States, all over the world, literally. So it's been out there for a long time.
Absolutely. But it is interesting. You talk about these newer vehicles that freaking spider farts in the engine compartment and the check engine light comes on.
Pretty much.
So there's got to be some technology there that you've brought to the table to make this thing, because it is bulletproof. I mean, I've seen them in all different rigs, from old CJs to freaking, like we say, brand new state-of-the-art JLs with full computer operating system. So what kind of challenge has that been to address those issues on the?
Well, there's always a way around
a little workaround.
You work around the computerization. You have to, first of all, and thank goodness I work with my son at our alternator shop in Yucca Valley. And we first of all, we figure out how the factory charging system works, no matter whatever vehicle we're working on. So once we establish that, we establish what parameters, voltage-wise, what signals are being sent from the computer, what signals the charging system is sending to the computer, all that stuff. We can go on and on about it.
Sure.
But you figure out how that works.
That makes sense.
Then you figure out how you can get around it.
And
there you go.
That involves a software engineer or an electrical engineer now, right?
And then every vehicle has its challenges, and it's been pretty cool that we've been able to pretty well figure out get in through the back door basically and figure things out right there, hands-on at the shop. So,
well, I love that because obviously the alternator is the hub of your operation, and I have an old CJ5, and it's been upgraded over the years. Got fuel injection, everything else. Got electric fans. I mean, there's a lot of taxation on my electrical system, dual batteries and all that stuff. And the great thing was, and I had like a 160 amp alternator or whatever before I went to your system. And immediately when I put your alternator in the system, I mean, right off idle, boom, it's at 14.2 volts or whatever. I mean, it's just the charging system is right there, and that's one of the biggest things I saw, because you're not welding every day out on the trail, but having a reliable charging system out on the trail that keeps both batteries topped off and all the electronics happy,
especially if you're doing a lot of winching and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So that's been huge. Okay, so let's get into the welding aspect of this thing. So, trail repairs. I mean, you get out there, there's all kinds of crazy stuff going on, and shit breaks. No matter how gentle or how crazy you are on that heavy right foot. So, John, let's get you in on this thing and talk about some of these trail repairs and how the Premier, works. And because I know they're just basic operation of the Premier, and obviously, Greg, you jump in too. But several times I've been on the trail with John, and he's out there welding on stuff. And go ahead and talk about how the Premier works and disconnects from the operating system and just promotes it charges the welding leads there.
So the Premier Welder uses frequency and amperage. It's a very soft starting welder when you talk about the stick welding world. Mm-hmm. And stick welding is not a dying art, but a lot of people are MIG masters now, and stick welders are not like they used to be, in the 70s and 80s. And a lot of advantages to stick welding, and we can get into that a little bit in a minute. But, one thing cool about the stick welder, and a lot of people don't understand this, is it's a DC negative, and that means you can weld on yourself.
Right.
And a lot of people don't understand if you use a MIG and TIG, depending on if it's inner shield or short arc MIG or TIG, the grounding changes. Goes from a positive ground to a negative ground.
Right.
And the Premier system with stick welding is all negative ground. The biggest advantage of having, the Premier, in my opinion, is it makes 20 amps of AC, so you can run, a grinder.
Yep.
And a grinding is half of the welding. You'd be able to cut,
have a clean
grind,
surface.
weld, and make little brackets, with cutoff wheels and whatnot. And then, switch over, hook up your leads, and use those, use your stick welder to weld it up. And the biggest advantage of stick welding in general is all the different alloy rods you can carry.
Right.
And people do not realize that, and that part of welding is in my opinion a very dying art.
Sure.
So I carry about 7 different rods in both my Jeeps, and we haven't left anything on the trail yet.
Yeah. So one thing that needs to be said here, and Greg or John explained this, and that's one of the, I don't know if it's a misconception or whatever, not knowing, ignorance of the system is, people go, oh, you're welding on your own vehicle. How do you not zap your electronics, your fuel injection, all that stuff? Well, the way you've got this system set up is, it separates the welding from the vehicle, correct? So you guys want to talk about that for a second?
Yes, that is correct. When the system is in the off position, and we have 2 different control boxes now. We have the full-size control box, which has the weld mode and power tool mode. And like John was saying, it's 2,300 watts of current to run a grinder. You have to run it off with DC power tools, but 2,300 watts to operate, grinders, cut off wheels, chop saws, skill saws, blow dryers, blender.
There's a blow dryer story.
Seen that.
But it can't be variable speed, right? If it is variable speed, you need to go full on or full off.
Exactly. Yeah. If you had a variable speed, like a grinder, or variable speed drill,
right?
Which, a lot of that stuff is kind of in the past, but if you happen to have one, you have to turn it on all the way, then plug it in.
Yeah.
But that's just one of those little tricks.
Right.
But what happens is when the system is off, whether you're using the micro box or the full size box, when the system is off, that's your charging system. That's what runs your electrical system.
Normal operating system.
Yeah. And then when you turn the system on, and we always stress on at idle, off at idle.
Correct.
But when you turn the system on, you're separating the alternator and any welding current, anything from the vehicle. As far as, so there's no way for that higher voltage and high frequency and all that to get to the computer, unless you physically, took the welding rod and melted right into the computer wires or anything like that.
Chris, don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that, people.
Want to do that?
And
then you go to town, right? And you go to town and you do your welding, and you one of our favorite sayings is turn it on and weld, turn it off and wheel.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I like that one.
That's good because you're totally separating. It's isolating is a great word. Isolating your vehicle charging system from the welding operation. So you're during idle or you're off idle. What, like 1,200, 2,000 RPM, something like that, John?
Yeah,
guys.
A JK, you're welding at about 1,000 RPM, 1,050 RPM.
And the engine and all the electronics operating the engine are purely running off your batteries at that point.
That's correct.
So you can't weld all day long with this system. As far as it will do it, but when your batteries die, your engine's going to die. It drops below 12 volts or whatever. But then when you flip that switch back after welding, then it's back to a normal charging situation. And high amp alternators, I know it varies between the vehicles, but very high amps compared to a factory alternator that's pushing a fire hose, if you will, because I love the analogy because I talk about winching or whatever, and it's like, oh yeah, I've got this great winch and I've winched for 15 minutes. Well, it's like filling a pool with a garden hose. It's going to take a long time.
Right.
Now with Greg's Premier Power Welder and his alternator setups, it's like putting a fire hose in that swimming pool to recharge your system, your batteries. So, right? Is that a fair analogy?
That's a pretty good analogy.
Okay.
Yes.
Just so the simple people, the Toyota owners out there, can understand this.
And the other thing too that you keep in mind when you're winching, you really should bring your RPMs up on your motor,
right,
and leave your engine running, because what's happening is any excess current. In other words, the battery is basically a shock absorber to the electrical system.
That's a good analogy.
Whereas
too.
a storage for electrical current. So the charging system with the Premier and the battery or batteries are all working together to maintain the voltage in the system and, cover that extra current needed for winching and all that. So, yeah, it kind of all works together.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's cool. So that's kind of the basis of the system. So, John, let's talk about some of the welding rods you carry. You said 7 rods, but I'm Joe Blow, 4-wheeler. I'm a very garage mechanic-esque welder. What rods should I carry? Because you're an expert welder, so you got 7 for all these different things. But as Joe Blow welder that can make metal stick together, what 3 or 4 rods should everybody carry on the trail that has one of these Premier Power Welders?
Probably 6011 would be a go-to rod for a newbie, somebody that has a little bit of stick welding knowledge, but is not is not doing it not under the hood every day. In my opinion, 7014 would be another good one. It's a iron powdered flux on it. It burns hot. It's kind of a butter rod, runs real easy. I personally think if you had to carry one rod that likes to stick to a little bit of everything, it would be 7018. But that's a difficult rod to run with its flux. It's a rod that's made to strike, run, and then get a new rod. And so that one's a more of an advanced rod, but it's referred to as high-low, and it works extremely well. So that would be pretty much my top 3.
Okay, your top 3. So 6011, 7014, and 7018.
Yeah, for a newbie.
Yeah. And then and another thing that should be said is, you go out and buy one of these welders, you need to be practicing in your driveway with this stuff or your garage, right? Because you don't want to strike this thing up for the first time out on the trail physically trying to put your junk back together. You got to weld a frame or a spring hanger back on or a steering component, whatever it may be.
Right.
So it's really good to get familiar with how it operates, what RPMs you should be operating at, and the box has a meter on it, a gauge that tells you when you're in that happy spot, but you're always dialing things in. And I know you, John, I've been out there several times when you've been welding out on the trail, and you're like, Jason, bump it up a little bit or whatever, because you're listening to the frequency that's coming off this thing, right? Because that's what you do for a living, but, Joe Blow doesn't know, so you need to get familiar with that in your driveway.
Yeah, and you have to remember that probably 80% of the brakes is going to be in a position that's hard to weld.
Right.
Frames, suspension pieces is going to be upside down or vertical up. And
that's very difficult.
A lot of people practice on a bench.
Straight down.
You burn it in with, 7014 or, 6011. It's pretty easy.
Right.
Now put it upside down.
Right.
And that changes the whole ball and wax. Your amperage ranges changes. You tend to be a little bit cooler on those. In your welding settings and whatnot, and chasing that flux around is a lot more difficult.
Yeah, and so you need to practice that, because the real world scenario is you're not going to be on a welding table in your garage, doing this nice, straight up and down weld. You're going to be underneath the vehicle, laying on a freaking rock that's poking you in the backside.
Or in a puddle.
Yeah, or a puddle or whatever. And, welding above your head and, trying to get the metal to melt together and flow is very difficult.
Oh, my God. I can't even imagine. I've never done that type of welding. I'm not good at it at all, but I don't even want to think about it, honestly.
I don't even want to think about it.
It's amazing what you'll do when you have to.
Well,
exactly.
There you go.
To get home.
Well said.
Get back to camp. And that's one of the greatest things. I mean, I talk to friends, family, whatever, and, they're like, oh, you're out 4-wheeling, and they think it's, no, shit breaks. Things happen. We come across vehicles that break. We don't leave anybody out on the trail. It's like, how do we get you back to camp? How do we get you back to your trailer? And I love the MacGyver, the ingenuity, and this Premier Power Welder has been one of the great tools that has saved a lot of people's asses out on the trail. But, somebody needs to be there to know how to use this thing.
Right.
And, it's freaking awesome.
One thing that I've seen, and it's kind of I have used probably 30 or 40 different machines of the Premier Welders. People will put these on their vehicles, and they don't even know how to weld. And I've been sitting in camp, been in Rubicon Springs and whatnot, and a guy will come walking through.
Sure.
And he'll have all this stuff. Hey, can you come over and,
I hear you
X,
can
Y,
weld.
and Z, and that is not a joke. So even for the guy out there that just has no time to learn, it's still not a bad option.
No, and just the charging system alone is worth it, in my
Absolutely.
opinion, because especially these newer vehicles and everybody's, even though you go to LED light bars and stuff, but there's a huge tax on the electrical system, especially if they've only got single battery. You got dual battery, okay, even better. But yeah, so I see where a lot of these guys, and let's face it, you're buying a, $60,000 plus rig. Buying one of these welders is a great accessory to have and peace of mind. And and some of these guys are buying it just because of the 110 outlet, to plug
Right.
stuff in, right?
Well, my wife
Comforts the
wants to
home,
blow dry
whatever.
her hair,
Yeah, exactly. So what are you seeing out there, Greg? Your customers, what have you seen here, especially in 2020 when everybody's at home working on their rigs? What kind of growth have you seen and questions you've been getting from customers and clients?
Well, one of the things that, just to touch on what John was just talking about with trail welding, is it's not uncommon to see a welder, a Premier Power Welder, on a rig, and the driver or the owner of the vehicle doesn't know how to weld and doesn't really want to.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But what's cool is, and John will attest to this, is you'll see usually 3, 4, 5, 6 rigs together. And one of those guys grew up on a farm, and their grandpa taught him how to stick weld.
See?
And, as long as you, and I recommend this to anybody that buys a welding system, bring the instructions,
Sure.
and practice with it, kind of get used to it. Even if you are just welding on a table, if you own it, you should know how to use
do
it. so that your buddy Frank, whose grandpa taught him how to weld, and knows how to weld upside down, you can be like, oh, dude, here, let me fire it up. This is how I use it. Here's the welding rod. This is what they told me to
get you
use.
live.
Heard John on this podcast tell me
exactly.
what rod to use. And
I carry these rods.
Familiarity.
I like it.
It's like anything. It's like knowing how to use your lockers.
Sure.
Knowing how to use your winch. You really should pay attention to how to use a winch,
Yep.
because that, people get hurt.
High lift jack falls in that same category.
Exactly. So anything like that. Now, as far as everybody knows 2020 was a weird year.
Yeah.
Why?
And so as far as us, we've been out of control busy.
Yeah.
And a lot of off-road companies have been, because guys unemployed and gets a stimulus check, and it's like, I've been wanting one of these. I'm going to buy one of these. So so we saw a spike in sales, definitely, that really is still kind of going on.
That's great.
It has tapered off a little bit, but it's made it kind of a challenge for us to keep up with it. But we're a small company, but we've been able to do it. And like anything, the auto industry has noticed or has had some difficulties with components.
Sure.
We've had our challenges, but we've gotten through them all.
Been able to get orders out. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
All your
That's
materials are sourced to the United States?
Yes. Well, North America.
North America. Okay.
North America.
Got it.
So we have some components that come from Mexico, some that come from Canada. Most everything in the control box is either custom made by us or bought in the United States.
Excellent.
Fantastic.
Our meters are made by a company, 2 different meters, one on the micro box and one on the full-size box. Made by one is made by an aircraft company, and the other is made by a marine company. Killer meters, super good, waterproof.
Wow.
You can run that control box and everything underwater, won't hurt it.
No kidding.
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Yep.
Let's not try that.
Well, no. But okay, so that's great. Love that. That it's all North America. And you started putting out some different colors, right? Because people are into the whole color theme and
It's
all that stuff, powder coating.
Yeah, it's a random thing.
It is.
Yeah.
But people love to customize their vehicle, and they open up the hood, and they're happy to show off what they got under the hood. And
We're in the process right now of a batch of colors. So if anybody listening wants a custom color,
Nice.
let us know on the
Nice.
full-size box right
Okay.
now.
So talk about because you referred to the micro box and the full size box. Talk about the difference between the two.
Main difference is that the micro box does not have the 110 outlet.
Right.
Other than that, it has the same capacity. It has a little different meter, but the meter works the same. Other than when you turn it on, you're only going into the weld mode. There's nothing on the meter that says anything about power tool mode. But as far as capacity, same capacity. It'll work with any. Both of them are interchangeable. You can take a micro box off and put a full-size box on, or vice versa.
Perfect.
So
they run the same regulator and everything.
Same regulator, same everything. So.
Okay, so that's good to know, because I want to get one of these micro boxes for my buggy. That's kind of more, you're not running. I carry, the DeWalt Milwaukee World has done wonderful with the battery operated grinders and stuff, but
Yep.
And just you're trying to save some room. Well, okay, now you can argue, well, now you're carrying battery operated equipment when you can carry a 110 grinder, but whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between those two boxes. They both operate the same. They both weld the same. One has a it's DC, or is it, what is it?
The 110 outlet?
Yeah, so the 110 outlet
is DC.
So it is DC, and that's why
Yes.
you can't do the variable speed tools.
Right, and you can't run a TV with it.
Right.
You can't charge a computer with it.
Right.
You can charge certain batteries and things like that, but you have to be very careful.
Yeah, but you outline all that in your instructions, and I know your website there that talks about all that different stuff. So,
Right.
But it is freaking killer.
Oh, I know.
I mean, what a tool to have on the trail. Okay, John, back to you because you're awfully quiet over there.
Yes.
So let's get into some. Just we don't need welding 101, but just some. The average Joe that's welding up an average break on the trail. Let's kind of run through that scenario real quick, because I know cleanliness is next to godliness when you're welding and making your weld as clean as possible. But here we are in the real world, out on the trail with grease, dust, water, whatever it is, out on the trail, and
Wind.
we need wind is another big,
Right.
very, very much so, Greg. So let's talk real world scenarios out on the trail, basic repair. Let's walk through that trail real quick.
So, a lot of people know that you can't weld in the wind with a MIG welder, with a TIG welder, or I shouldn't
Right.
say MIG, short arc MIG using an inert gas. Any welding with an inert gas, meaning a shielding gas.
Right.
Stick welding in general, you can weld if it's muddy. You can weld if it's rusty. It will, a rod like 6010, 6011
Will burn through.
will burn through it. Could you weld in a hurricane with a stick? Probably not. Light and variable winds, even semi-high winds in the mountains, ain't going to do nothing. It's going to burn right through it because of the flux
Right.
on the rod. Different fluxes, if you break the rod, the 4 digits on the rod down, different fluxes act differently, and it tells the welder something. But that will still weld. That's the great thing about stick welding, is why it's in the construction world. One of the many reasons why it's in the construction world is it literally will stick to anything. We're not talking X-ray quality. We're talking about getting home, getting back to the trailer.
Get back to,
Right.
to camp.
But,
Right.
if you V it out a little bit and you got rust and whatnot on there, it's going to burn right through it, and you don't have to worry about it. That's the beauty of stick welding.
So
it really is.
So here's a great example of that. So you'll remember this. Moab, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we were on Moab together?
I think 2016.
Yeah, 2016. So 5 years ago. It's 2021 right now. I broke the anti-wrap mount on my rear axle on
Yes.
the Moab Trail. You remember that?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so it was lunchtime. It was a very fortuitous break in that we were stopping already, and I look under the rig, and Tom was riding with me, who is a very good mechanic and welder in his own right, but I trusted you more than him. He doesn't listen to the podcast. So anyways, I go, Johnny, finish your sandwich. We got some welding to do on my rig. I have not touched that rig. That was a permanent trail fix right there, and it's been 6 years of wheeling. And you did it with the Premier Power Welder on my rig. Oh no, we used your rig. We used your welder on mine, but I had the welder. No, I didn't. I bought it at that event.
You bought it at that event.
That's right. I bought it at that event, so it wasn't installed yet.
Yeah.
But so we used
So-
John's
so we
welder.
used my-
and I talked to Greg right out, and you had just bought the company. I think that was your first event, one of your first events,
So
Moab.
no better sales pitch.
It was
right there,
freaking
huh?
great. But that weld is still on my Jeep to this day. There was no reason for me to cut it off and re-weld it because it was super strong.
Yeah, controversially, a stick weld has built the world, and they're extremely strong if done correctly, prepped correctly, and whatnot. There is absolutely nothing wrong in the strength world of a stick weld. They're phenomenal. It's actually, I would prefer a stick weld over a MIG weld any day.
There you go. Yeah,
Wow.
and it is. I mean, and it's welding. You know, the foundation of welding. Let's talk about what we saw last weekend up here, and it was the very first time I've seen a trail fix. Well, it was in camp fix that John was supervising, but Tyler was actually welding, and that was the first time I've seen John on the sidelines. Just like if anything goes or you're doing something wrong, John's going to chime in. But you were there observing Tyler, and he used two different rods. So talk about that process and why he did that on a spring hanger on Samurai James rig.
Yeah, on Sammy James' rig, we found a crack. It was probably about 4 inches long, and Tyler had his new Premier welder on there from Snail Trail.
Right.
Tyler.
Yeah.
And,
we don't like to talk about that podcast too much, but anyway.
Yeah, you know how it is. And he's relatively new to it. It was upside down. It was kind of a hybrid weld between vertical and overhead. And so he asked me, how would you approach it? Had a little rust in the weld. It was a trail repair. We were just trying to get him through the week here at Sierra Trek.
Right.
So he ground it out, and I said, and this is common in the pipeline world, root was 60-10, 60-11, mainly 60-10, but 60-11 is very similar.
And that's what Tyler used, 60-11.
And he used 60-11, and then so he rooted the weld. He ground it out. 60-11 is a very deep penetrating rod. Then he buffed the flux out of it, and then he put a cap on it of 70-18, and that's one of the strongest welds in the world right there, that process. So you're using a deep penetrating rod with a medium penetrating rod on top of it.
See, and that's cool. I mean, there's people that just don't know.
Yeah, I would.
So it's like you carry one rod, you're going to do whatever.
So you would consider that a root and a cap
and
or
a cap.
fill. Yeah,
and it's super strong.
And it's the strongest weld in the world. Done
There you
right,
go.
strongest weld in the world.
There you go.
Yeah.
And there's no reason for James to go home and grind that out and re-weld that thing.
I plead the fifth.
Huh?
I plead the fifth.
Okay. All right.
If I would have done it, sure.
For liability. Oh, wow. There it is. I love it. There you go, Tyler.
So I want to ask.
I'm just joking.
No, it's funny. That's
I want to
good.
ask a question. I mean, a few years ago we were doing trail here at on Fort Ice Creek. Jason, I was riding right seat with Jason in his buggy, and we were.
Imagine that, Chris in the right seat.
Well, it's a good place, but we were dragged. That was the year we got voluntold. You got voluntold to be dragged, and we were coming up trail, and you were welding on somebody's broken rig on the side, and you were hard at work. Yeah. And one of the things that you were doing is you were adding material. You used a bolt or something to melt into it to add. What was going on there?
I don't remember the exact repair.
It was below windshield 4.
Okay.
It was some newer rig that came down, and you needed.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember
that was
I
Dave's
don't know if
rig.
It was a link or something.
It was
but
a
you
link
needed
that-
a fill.
Yeah, it was a link that it had ripped off the axle, and so a lot of times you'll find when welding is all about fitment. A pretty weld is all about fitment.
Right.
And a lot of times when parts break off a rig, they turn, twist, and rip. So you beat it into submission trying to get it as straight as you can, but you'll have huge gaps to fill. So I carry plate, bolts, we've cut off wrenches,
Angle iron.
anything
Yeah,
to
wrenches.
bridge the gap. I did one a couple weeks ago on the Rubicon, and we had probably half-inch gaps. Same type of break in the same place on a LJ, and we just literally took some drop that I had off my shear, and we made little triangular brackets, welded that front, back, bridged the gap, and that fixed it. So we were using the bolts probably in that situation that's what we had.
Yeah,
and it was just bridging the gap. That's all it was.
Gotcha.
And the whole theory was that one was an ugly one, and it was just literally to get him off the trail, and he drove it. He drove it to Truckee.
Yeah, I know you were not happy with that. You're a perfectionist, to say the least, type A, like me. But I know you were not happy with that weld. But you knew in your heart of hearts that it was going to get him off the trail.
Yeah.
And that's the end game is just get back to home base, wherever that is.
I believe we followed him up the trail.
Yeah,
too.
get back to it. Yeah, we did. We were drag, and we got him off the trail, and that's awesome. Greg, you got any? You got to have some crazy stories or something about getting some rig off the trail. You got anything that comes to mind? That
Nothing really comes to mind.
Really?
My own personal experience.
Or out on the trail and repairing somebody. I mean,
we have done a ton of wheeling in Johnson Valley.
That's brutal down there,
where the hammers are. I personally was broke in the middle of Sledge.
Oh yeah, there
and
you go.
Without the welder, I would have had to.
You'd still be there, and we wouldn't be having this podcast.
But we've welded on virtually every trail out there at one time or another. So yeah, it's too many really to mention. But when the vehicle is completely inoperable, that is where the where the welder comes in, because it's like you don't have a choice.
But are you getting? I mean,
or you
I gotta
abandon the vehicle,
right? I gotta imagine you're getting some emails, text, whatever, dude. Your freaking Premier just saved our trip, our day. I mean, how cool is that? How rewarding is that? And just knowing that you were part of somebody's recovery, that's got to be pretty cool.
Yeah, and John, I think, is a lot like me in the aspect of we really enjoy helping people, especially in our recreation that we enjoy doing. It's really very fulfilling in life to be a part of a rescue.
Yeah.
And I'm the kind of guy, I see someone in need, I like to help when I can. You're on a trail and someone's over the side, hey, what do you need? Just in case, I have that bolt or I have that fitting or I have, they need some welded.
Whatever it may be.
Exactly. And it really is very fulfilling to be able to help someone out, get them back on the trail, and they can enjoy what we're doing.
Exactly. No,
so, yes, and stories, oh my gosh, at off-road events that I work, at our booth, hundreds and hundreds. I should have been writing them down.
Wow. You could write a book, coffee table book.
Yeah, exactly. So
trail fixes.
Every event that I work, someone comes up and says, man, this guy pulled up with one of your welders, or man, my welder saved us. And
it sells itself.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's super freaking cool.
Very fulfilling.
Yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I have those same stories. It is fulfilling. It's at a lot of cool friendships.
Yeah.
A lot of cool friendships have been developed over it.
How much money have you been offered on the trail, John, for trail fixes? I know you don't take money for trail fixes, but I know you've been offered a bunch of different stuff. And
there's been a lot of $100 bills thrown at me. I've never, ever, ever taken any money for it. I don't believe in it.
Pay it forward.
I say pay it forward. The only time that anything ever happened was up here at Sierra Trek. I fixed a Genrite Jeep, and they sent me something in the mail, which was really cool. Afterwards.
Yeah.
And that was a little different,
Yeah.
And we were bantering back and forth a little bit on Facebook, and they wanted to pay me. I wouldn't take it.
Right.
And they sent me something from my TJ in the mail. It was really nice, which was really cool on them. Cool on me, cool on them, right. And some great friendships, was spun from there.
And that's our community, and that's what I love, and we talk about it several times here on the podcast, and it is so cool knowing, none of us are experts in every field out there, whether it be medical, mechanical repair, welding, whatever it may be out on the trail, but everybody is so willing to help each other out there. Regardless, we joke around about Ford, Dodge, Toyota, Chevy, whatever it is,
right.
Barbie Jeeps, whatever it is. But when it comes down to it and somebody's broke on the trail, everybody's going to pull their shit out and get you going again.
Yep.
Somehow, some way. And I love it. And it's cool that you're producing a product, Greg, that has helped so many people out there. And it's freaking awesome. And it is. It's not that we're out there to like, I carry a bunch of extra stuff. I carry some, metric tools. I don't have, I got one 12 millimeter bolt on the buggy.
Do you have a 10 millimeter socket?
But you got a 10 millimeter socket for the Toyota guys. You're that's why I like wheeling with clubs, groups, my group of friends, because I know we have never left a vehicle out on trail overnight.
Nope.
It's always our junk's always gotten back to camp somehow, some way. It may have taken a long time. We may have drug it up the trail, whatever it is, but somehow, some way, we've gotten everything back to camp. And I'm proud to say that. And I know you guys echo the same sentiments. And trying to figure out how we're going to get them back to camp. But here we are talking about welders and Premier, and it is a huge asset out there on the trail. And love it. Kind of want to wrap this up. We're a little short on time, but advice, like what? So you go out and buy this welder. What you talked about the 3 rods. John, Greg, open it up. 6011, 7014, 7018. Having some metal, some angle iron, some plate. Nuts, bolts, wrenches, whatever you got, some Harbor Freight wrenches, you could use those, whatever it takes to get off the trail. What other things would you recommend somebody carrying? A grinder, obviously. You got to have your safety gear. Let's talk about safety gear real quick. What do you carry to perform these fixes out on the trail welding?
One issue that I had is I learned on just a standard helmet, and welding every day. Welding with electronic helmet, I kind of screwed myself. So now
auto darkening.
I went with an auto darkening. I actually went with a mask that Miller makes because it packs up real tight.
That is a cool setup.
It is. I do in my as I have 2 Jeeps, 2 welders. The other one has just a little pull down, standard leather welding helmet. But cheap pair of safety glasses. You're going to need it.
Yep.
You're going to need a little wire brush. Have a grinder with 3 wheels.
There you go.
Cutoff wheel.
Yep.
Grinding wheel, flapper wheel, couple apiece.
Yep.
You will use all 3 of those wheels.
The cutoff wheels break.
Or
they're too big, so I carry smaller ones too. Ones that I wear down.
Yes.
I carry small ones because you get in a tight spot.
Yes.
You cannot use a brand new grinding wheel because it won't fit. So there's a little pro tip for you right there.
A little pro tip for
nice.
you, and you can make up a chipping hammer. A wire brush goes a long way, to help knock out and finish cleaning the flux out of there, and gloves.
Yep.
I actually carry a little cotton welding jacket because I seem to get on a lot of repairs.
Well, especially
and
when you're
whatnot.
welding upside down.
You're going to get showered in sparks.
Yeah.
So I have a beanie, put on my little cap, and it doesn't take up hardly any space, and whatnot. But and then of course don't let anybody look at the arc.
Yeah, you're right. That is a big thing because everybody's there, and especially there's people. How many people have been exposed to welding? Let's be realistic. In our world, probably more than most, but general public has not been exposed to welding and doesn't know to not look at work. And it's cool. You're like, holy shit, they're melting metal together. I'm going to watch this. You cannot
steel.
watch it. So that brings up a good deal. Can you watch it through your phone and not get hurt, right?
I can't answer that question.
Okay, so John's being totally Switzerland here.
Oh boy.
Yeah, I really
It's
don't
okay.
know. And what people don't understand is it's in misconception here is it's not instant.
Right.
You literally sunburn your eyes.
You do.
And
that is the thing. It's
so-
a progressive thing.
Hours later, it feels like you have little boulders, rocks, sand, gravel, whatever you want to
And
call
it's
it, in your
because you
eyes.
were watching that art.
And in whatever they call that front part of your eye is sunburn. It's got little
Cornea?
bubbles on it.
Is it the cornea?
I don't know.
I'm not a medical doctor.
And,
I'm going to go with cornea for 500,
Cornea's
Alex.
at the front, retina's at the back.
Yeah, see, there you go.
And
Yeah.
It's
It
not
is.
cool.
I've gotten it before.
Yeah,
because
it's
I grew
not
up
cool.
around my dad, and as a stupid kid, and
Oh, that's
he's
cool.
over there welding, and I'm over, oh, cool, and then
Yeah.
it does feel like sand in your eyes.
Yeah.
But I've had these machines since the mid '90s, and a little earlier than that, and they're awesome.
Yeah. So that is good. So that's a great list there. So
Also, be
go.
very aware of your surroundings.
yeah. So that I was just going to tie that back in because
Keep
like
a
John.
shovel, a fire extinguisher, and
Water.
For heaven's sake, we don't want to start a fire in the forest.
No, and you're absolutely right. And we've talked about this on the podcast because and that is part of the responsibility of the person that's doing the welding. It's like, look at your surroundings. Okay, yeah, we're out on Grand sometimes, a Rubicon, Fordyce here, whatever. But sometimes you're out in the forest where there are down trees,
pine
there's some
needles,
pine
leaves.
duff, whatever. So look at your freaking surface. Throw down a tarp, whatever. It's going to get holes in it. It's going to get damaged, but whatever. At least have people on standby with fire extinguishers because something can start, and if you have fire extinguishers on the scene, zap it right away before it gets out of hand, because if it gets out of hand 2-3 minutes is going to start the whole forest on fire.
Right.
Yeah, and watch which direction your sparks get thrown.
Right.
That's probably more than the welding itself is sparks coming off a cut-off wheel, grinding
I was
wheel,
gonna
whatever.
say,
Cut-off
just
wheels are
grinding even.
turning, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at where that's going, being aware of the people that are around you, because everybody wants to kind of jump in and help, and some people are totally ignorant, and nothing against them. They're not. They don't have a mechanical bone in their body, but they want to be there. They want to learn. They want to help. Okay, cool. Here's what as the person doing the welding, grinding, everything, need to take responsibility and take charge of that operation and go, okay, hey, you guys, we need ABC, we need to get a tarp down, we need to get 3 fire extinguishers, whatever it is, take control of that operation and be the boss and go, okay, hey, I'm going to start grinding. There's going to be sparks flying in this direction. Get everybody out of the way. Boom. Okay, now I'm going to start welding. Nobody look at the freaking arc because you will burn your eyes.
Yeah.
So, it's easy. We get off-road and we're in this rural environment, but we need to think about safety, and a lot of people don't.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a very good point there.
Absolutely.
So another thing to me, not just in the welding aspect, but in the generally being prepared. Everybody that's listening to this, if you have a Jeep and you're going out on extreme trails, you're overlanding, you're whatever you're doing, be prepared. Get your stuff out on a Saturday. You end up with a Saturday, you don't have much to do. It's like, man, I'm going to go through my tools.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through my spare parts. I'm going to go through my welding stuff. I'm going to fire up my welder and make sure it works. I'm going to fire up my air compressor. Air compressors don't, Vial, whatever, the Arabi compressors, they don't
Right.
like to sit.
No, nothing likes
It's like
to sit.
anything. Exercise it. Make it work. Keep a maintainer on your batteries. Keep your rig stocked with everything you need. Be prepared. Not just with a welder, not with just a winch. Make sure your winch works.
Right.
Make sure your air
Exactly.
compressors work. Make sure you've got some first aid equipment. Everything. It's a huge aspect. And nothing is way cooler than, you're with a group and everybody is just ready for whatever.
Right. And that's awesome advice. And I mean, how many times, John, you and I done it, Greg, Chris, whatever, you loan something out, right? You're loaning out some disc or welding rod or whatever, a spare part or a nut or bolt, and then, you don't write it down out on the trail. Let's be realistic. And you get to the next scenario out on the trail, and you're like, I know I got this 5/8 bolt nut, whatever operation. And you're like, shit, I lent that out on the Rubicon 3 weeks ago. So that is very good to do an inventory, get familiar with your stuff. I know a lot of people, type A's like John and I, freaking write everything down. We know exactly what's in our rig at all times. But, it is good to get familiar with it. Exercise it is a huge part. And maintenance, just making sure everything's working. Yeah. Stuff loosens up, battery connections loosen up, whatever, you go to use it, and it's like, why is this welder not working? Oh, well, the freaking battery terminal's corroded or whatever. So keep up on your maintenance, and we do harp on that.
Oh, yeah.
On this podcast because
we abuse this equipment.
Yeah,
It
we
needs to be
do.
taken
It
care
does
of.
get abused, and when you need to use it, you want it to work. So, wrap this thing up. So, any final thoughts? Let's talk about Greg. How do we get a hold of you? How do our listeners get a hold of you and learn more about Premier Power Welder?
Well, we're at on the web, premierpowerwelder.com.
Okay.
There's if you want to look at our products, which we have a number of products that are available that are not on our website. There's several phone numbers to get a hold of us, 800 numbers and tech lines. Don't hesitate to call.
Yep.
If you don't see something
you
that
want.
you need, call us. Be like, oh yeah, we just haven't put that on the website, whatever.
I've done that before, and I've had friends call. I'm like, just call Greg. He'll hook you up. He'll tell you exactly what you need for your rig. And
I love talking to people.
Yeah, you will talk to
You really
people
want a
and-
welding system, you call me.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll make it happen.
Or just a charging system too.
Yeah,
Or
just a charging
You do
system.
some badass alternators. So
There it is.
Yeah, I have almost 41 years experience
Yep.
in alternators,
There you go.
and starters, and old generators, and
Sure.
started as a 19-year-old working at an alternator starter shop.
Yep.
So that's how I got my foot in the door. I've loved off-roading from my old Land Cruiser to, my LJ to whatever. It's I love it all.
That's awesome. No, it is. It's great. You're not this. You're a small operation. And you know your craft. You're an expert in it, and people want to call and get updated on and figure out what the best system is for their system.
Another thing that
their
I try
operation.
and I tell people is, you've got any input in anything that we're building. I am not above advice or, hey, I got a suggestion
Sure.
or anything like
That's
that.
awesome.
I love that kind of stuff.
Cool.
So anybody ever has anything?
It's product development.
Product development, or hey, this didn't work quite for me. What could we do?
That's
I
awesome.
love that kind of
You're
stuff.
open
And
to it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
love figuring things out.
Fantastic.
John he's a great. Oh my gosh, he's
giving you a little
been
feedback over the years, huh?
Very good for product development, and him and I, we have a really good relationship, and just great.
Yeah, it's been awesome.
Yeah.
Johnny, you got anything else to add over there?
They're worth their weight in gold.
Yeah, they really are.
I can't say enough about the product. I've had multiple in different vehicles.
Yeah.
My dad has them. I mean, literally within a half-mile radius of my house, there's 5.
Yep.
So I believe in the product, and they work. And they've saved a lot of people a lot of trips.
Well, one of the coolest, compliments or whatever that, when I bought it, 6 years ago now, I guess, I brought it home and, showed my dad. And my dad was, a machinist and welder, could weld anything. And he, I'm like, hey, Dad, what do you think? And he was a man of very few words, but he goes, that's pretty freaking cool. And, to get him to sign off on it was pretty
Hell
cool.
yeah.
John knows my dad. And it was cool. So it's a great product. Like I say, even if you buy it, and it's great to hear, Greg, you say that people buy it that don't even know how to weld. You don't need to know how to weld. Just have it on the rig because somebody out on the trail is going to know how to use it. But get familiar with it. But the charging system alone is worth it, in my opinion, with all these newer vehicles that have a high electrical demand. But then having the bonus of, yes, you can weld your own rig or somebody else's rig out on the trail is huge.
Sure.
So, yeah, great stuff. Chris, you got anything else over there?
Well, I just want to say, you mentioned about people buying it that don't know how to weld, but this kind of goes hand in hand with the ham radio, especially on the Rubicon. If you're one of those people that has it in your JKJL, latte machine, whatever,
Yeah.
you can call out on the ham radio, and more than likely somebody like John Allen's going to be a mile away and can turn around or come up and help
true.
out.
That's true. Yeah.
So if you don't have a ham radio, you should get it and certainly get licensed and whatnot. So. Yeah, that's all I got to say.
Yeah, that's good. So, okay, PremierPowerWelder.com. You got IG or anything like that, or you just you're old school?
We have a Facebook.
You got Facebook?
Yeah,
Okay.
And Yeah, we have stuff on Instagram and all that kind of stuff.
But good old Google Premier
yeah.
Power Welder.
There it is.
And a phone number.
You'll find Greg and a phone number.
You want to talk to a human? Call us.
Let's get real here. You're not going to get in a phone tree with elevator music. Hold music and shit. And most of the time you're going to be talking to Greg himself, and it's awesome. So
yeah, the most I can say, or the best thing I can say, is if you do get our system, get familiar with it.
Yeah,
and get familiar with your entire Jeep.
Yeah,
everything works together. It's like a kitchen,
right?
You got a sink, you got a stove. That's the same with a Jeep.
Yeah.
I mean, you have the lockers, you have hubs, you have a winch, you have everything. Get familiar
Drive
with it.
system.
Go out and enjoy it.
Know how it works.
Yeah, know how it works.
Yeah, and that's the cool thing about getting out and having fun and being able to get back to camp.
Meadow Lake. So if you want to get a hold of Chris or Jason at Wheeling Wine and Whiskey, you can catch us at our email addresses, Chris or Jason at wheelingwineandwhiskey.com. Or you can also get a hold of Jason through the Instagram at Wheeling Wine and Whiskey. You can also call us. What's that phone number? 408 800 5169. That's right.
1-800 wait. That's
408
800 5169.
That's right. And you got anything else?
No, John, you want to give a shout out to I know you're big on social media.
I am.
He's not. That's why
I am. And on that note,
he's on Facebook. But yeah. Anyways, guys, thanks for taking some time. It's busy. John's co-chair of this event.
Yes, he is.
I know he's running around. He's got the ham radio in his hand. He keeps listening in. We got to get back to main camp. Greg, thank you for being on the podcast. This is something that we had our booths right next to each other, and I've known you for a while. And I went to John yesterday. I go, hey, what's the possibility of getting you and Greg on this podcast to get some real world welding experience and Premier Power Welder out there on the airwaves here of podcast land. So thank you guys for taking time out of your schedule. It's been freaking awesome. There's more to come here. Yep. We just brushed the surface, but go check out Premier Power Welder. And
we'll do it again.
Yeah, we'll do it again. Absolutely. All right, guys.
Great info.
Thanks for having us.
We're out.